Everybody, Bobby Fine, Eric Sheetshaber. We're going to be talking about this baseball slate. It's a little bit of a shaky internet and Sheetslit world, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to see if we're going to be able to do this with Sheets here. If not, I can always take over, but we're going to try and do the best we can using my screen, going game by game. For what it's worth, on the weekend, I did not end up doing well in golf this week. Had some swipes that I could have had a shot going into Sunday, but I'm sure everybody felt that way because it was just a really tough course, and it was hard to know who was going to end up where. You might have been in 10th place and ended up in 70th, and the flip side could happen. So the wild tournament. Anyway, moving on to baseball today. Well, moving on to Sheets. Sheets, how are you doing over there? And yeah, we can see you and we can hear you. So hopefully that'll stand.
Yeah, for me, golf was, I didn't really make any headway or lose any ground after like the first day. It always kind of stayed the same for me. I was cashing in one of the single entries. I got as high as 8th, as low as 20th, and I was basically waffling around there the whole time. Didn't really get a lot of variance in any of the golf lineups throughout the week. I ended up losing a little bit, and we'll get after today. The good thing is that even though my connection isn't good, it's such a straightforward slate with respect to who the best plays are that it's not going to be that big of a deal. What's going to be a big deal is figuring out how to actually play GPPs without getting to the obvious spots, but we'll try to handle that as we get there.
Absolutely, sounds good. All right, well, let's go game by game here, and we'll just go through and see what we like. So starting with St. Louis and Miami. Go ahead, Sheets. I'll let you start it off, and then I'll go after you so we can have a little break because it's about a half-second delay.
Okay, so right now I have one pitcher that stands out among the, above everybody else, and then a pretty healthy tie for who I could use as an SP2. And weirdly, Sonny Gray I have as the, one of the SP2s. Now, again, SP2 usually means cheaper, but in this case, it's just the second pitcher. And because the first guy that I like is pretty expensive, it's going to require paying up for, 2 pitchers, which on a slate where you have Coors might not be the greatest idea in the world. So I do have Sonny Gray listed as by himself kind of a decent play, but I don't know if construction is going to get me there. And Braxton Garrett I have as cheap enough, but just not quite projecting as well. So I'm probably going to end up at the end of the day being off of both of these guys. With respect to the hitting, this does rate like both Coors as one of the top values for me. So I will definitely throw that in. And as far as just raw points, not really, but St. Louis rated as one of the better values. So for me, it's St. Louis. I'm probably not going to end up playing Gray, even though he projects okay.
Yeah, right now, I think we're in the same position here. I don't really love St. Louis, but I don't mind it, and I am open to Gray. I'm honestly open to Garrett, just trying to think a little bit differently. St. Louis has not been like exactly lighting the world on fire this year against lefties. Although again, I keep saying this, they have been improving. So there is that, but they haven't really flashed that much power upside, and they've just been basically an adequate team against left-handed pitching. And Garrett, might have some upside as a contrarian play. So probably a game that ends up on the outside looking in for me, but that's just what I'm considering as of right now. Moving over to San Diego, Philadelphia.
So who do we have? That's who are the pitchers there?
Vasquez Sanchez.
Okay, so Vasquez and Sanchez, I'm actually not getting to either of these guys at all. They don't really rate anywhere for me, so I guess pitching would be no. As far as hitting, Philly, not really. I'm not really getting to. Well, that's not true. So I actually do have Philly as kind of the second, just highest projected point total, right, of anybody on the slate. Granted, it's like 10 points lower than the next one, but and I do have them being significantly lower owned, probably because they're, among other things, they're not too easy to get to. So I actually do like Philadelphia here as kind of a, I guess, contrarian spend up. I guess that's what you call it. I don't know. And then I'm not getting really to San Diego. Oh wait, you know what? San Diego is looking just kind of okay for me.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I really like Philly today. I know it's hard. You're not going to be able to play them with the Dodgers because it's just going to be too expensive. But I really I like Philly. It's a good it's a good matchup. They got a 5.4 run total. The 85 degrees with 11-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to center in Philadelphia feels like a really good spot to take advantage of Philly as a pivot stack off of Coors, and I think that's what I'm going to probably end up doing in a good portion of my lineup. So I really like Philly today. Not getting to the pitching at this moment, but may end up taking just a wild card chance on Sanchez a little bit later in the lineup or two, but nothing special as a priority other than the fact that I really do like Philly. So they're expensive. It's gonna keep them low owned because it's hard to play that people are gonna want to play the Dodgers, and I think that they're a terrific pivot. All right, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh.
Sorry about this. My
Sorry. Up to you, Sheets. What do you like in this one? Sorry, guys, having a little bit of sound issue here. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Sheets. What do you like here?
Yeah, sorry about this, but the computer was so slow that I was literally trying to enter on the slate. Can you hear me or no?
Yeah, I can hear you. That was good. That's right.
Okay, so I have Skeens as currently the best pitcher on the slate by and let me see if I was getting the stacks really. Yeah, I mean, why not? I actually have Pittsburgh as far as also as a good value as far as the hitting goes well. So I guess I'll start with that with Skeens. Next to you.
Yeah, I have Pittsburgh, and they're one of my top 5 stacks today, and I think Skeens is the number 1 pitcher. So Pittsburgh is another one of the the pivots off of the Colorado chalkiness, but they're going to have some ownership themselves, and they're very affordable. So I actually like Pittsburgh quite a bit here against Spears. For what it's worth, it's 92 degrees in Pittsburgh, and it seems like excellent in hitting conditions. They've got almost a 5-run total themselves. So I am very cool with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia early on as pivots off of the Coors game. All right, moving over to Boston and Toronto. We've got Kikuchi and Pivetta. Go ahead, Sheets. What do you like here? Did I lose you?
No, I stepped away.
Sheets, did I lose you here, man?
Everything's just kind of real. Yeah, just got to give it a second for delay before chance to get into it. So I have Kikuchi right now as one of these kind of secondary pitchers, as I mentioned before. I have Skeens up at the top, and then I have 3 others, and Kikuchi is one of them. And again, when I actually build with the Sims and stuff, I might not even get to them at all, but just from hand building and just knowing kind of who the best plays are. Yes, I was getting to Kikuchi. And then Pivetta, I have just like a little bit below. Now, with that said, Pivetta does, as usual, have a decent amount of upside. So if I see him at 12% ownership, which is where I see him right now, I'll probably end up getting a little bit more of him just because I know that he can flash that kind of upside. We're not saying that Kikuchi can't, but I think that relative to his median, for whatever reason, Pivetta's got more upside than Kikuchi relative to his median, like in general. So I don't mind bumping up Pivetta in my rankings a little bit and reducing Kikuchi a little bit for that reason.
Yeah, it's funny because you can see on my screen here, and maybe I'll get in trouble for sharing this, but I was looking at Pivetta's BVP just to see if I was correct in remembering that I feel like this Toronto team has torched him. And I was in fact correct. He has not had a good go with this Toronto team. And Toronto is one of the lowest strikeout teams in baseball, even though they frustrate us by not hitting. You also have a ton of a really high walk rate there for Pivetta. I just feel like this is a spot where I won't touch Pivetta probably. I do like Kikuchi, even though I agree with your statement that usually you think Pivetta is the higher upside. Boston strikes out like crazy against lefties. That doesn't work every time against them. They can be dangerous, but with them outside of Boston, I'm all in. I'm aboard on Kikuchi being probably currently my favorite SP2, but we'll see by the end of this. And I have no interest in the bats here. I think it's not quite the right slate to maybe take some shots. If I did, it would be on Toronto. That's pretty much all I got. Moving over to Detroit and Atlanta, we've got Fried and Olsen, and I'm just taking a quick look at the weather. It's 90 degrees, but you do have 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in for what it's worth. So I'm curious what the field ends up doing here, Sheets. What do you like here?
I actually have Fried as that set is the other one. So I had Skeens at the top, and then I had Kikuchi, Fried, and Gray as my next tier. So yes, I do like Fried, but getting there might be hard. I think that if you want to get to any of these Coors games, that doesn't mean you have to, but if you want to get there, you're going to have to make some concessions somewhere at pitcher. So we'll see what ends up happening. And who are they playing? Who's the other side of this? Oh yeah, Olsen.
Yeah.
So the Olsen one is one that I don't mind in the context of this slate, sort of. You know what I mean? If I can get to 7K guys somehow, I think I probably should do it. And then we're going to talk about 6K guys also. So I don't know. He certainly doesn't project all that great. Not surprisingly, he's against Atlanta. But I think if I end up getting to some of that, I'm probably just going to leave it. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this.
Yeah, so I get it. I really like I like Fried just fine today. The problem I have is the strikeout upside is just always feels like a little like you need him to be so clean, but he's often so clean that it's okay. It's also really, really hot, but still. So I think Fried belongs in that category, just a little bit more expensive maybe than I'm going to end up wanting to play. I like Reese Olson as a pitcher. It feels like a tough matchup, but I don't mind, as a gamble. Let's say he does end up 8%. Goldie's got him at 5%. And I did want to just remind everybody, Goldie's projections show up at the very back, both the projection and then the ownership projection. I'm using the ownership projection, which I drag all the way to the front. It's really easy to do, and I just suggest everybody does it because they're very, very accurate, very excellent projections anyway. In terms of the hitting, I don't know, man. I get the Atlanta taking some shots in Atlanta here. Whether you want to play Atlanta or not, I do like Kalenic. Look, this guy's been hot. He's hit home runs back-to-back games. He's 3,200, very affordable when you're going to need some value. If you need a one-off, I think you could do a lot worse. Also, he's got the 90-degree weather, and the wind's not really going to affect him because it's blowing in from left a little bit more. So he could hit one out of here again today. So I do like the Kalenic one-off as a potential value play. But keep in mind, lineups are going to be a lot different than we expect today, just because the nature of what happens when you end up with Monday slate. All right, and we move over to San Francisco and Chicago. And before I let Sheets say what he likes or doesn't like here, I'll do a really quick weather look. And it is exactly like you'd expect. Monster weather game. This is where all the ownership will be that's not Dodgers, in my opinion. And or Dodgers, Colorado to some extent, I guess. San Francisco's got a 4.9 total. Cubs have got a 5.1 total. It's 90 degrees with 14-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to left. So massive weather game with a huge weather boost here. Definitely not, but we'll see what Sheets likes here, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, both offenses, no pitching, and that's it. I mean, you're going to get ownership outside the Coors game, and we're going to have to wait and see how much of an ownership break you get, if at all. So, yeah, I like both. It's hard to fade those Wrigley games, and I like both sides of it.
Yeah, same page. If I had to prefer a side, I think I prefer the Cubs. I also think the Cubs will be high. Could end up being lower owned because they have more expensive bats, and people might be pairing them with Dodgers and whatnot. And I do think we're gonna have to wait till later today. Sheets won't be here at 6, but I'll be here and we'll talk about a little bit of some of the things that changed. I just think these early projections are a little bit low on the ownership here. But if they stayed that way, I would be very, very happy to just say, okay, I'll hold my breath and forget about Colorado and play the Philly and San Francisco and Chicago side. I think this is the next most attractive spot to me, other than Philly and Colorado, and I think they're all really good. And I like the Cubs side a little bit better, but I do think both sides are viable. Although every time I try to play against Assad in one of these weather games, it feels like he always just does enough to get me frustrated. So, leaning a little more Chicago, but San Francisco is the value side of it. Okay, moving over.
Question. How many?
What was it?
Don't worry about it. Just keep going.
Okay. New York and Texas. In Texas, John Gray, David Peterson. Is it a Peterson troll game, or what do you like here, Sheets?
Well, my initial builds were certainly getting me quite a bit of Peterson for the reasons I kind of alluded to earlier. If you wanted to get up to some of these big bats, you're gonna have to eat it somewhere. And as a result, I was getting quite a bit of this. So he certainly doesn't project all that great, but the good news is he doesn't look at that much ownership either. So I'm getting to some of it in my builds where where I need big bats. And on the other side, I'm actually getting some Mets in my stacks as well. So definitely getting to some Peterson, like it or not, and getting some Met stacks. What are you getting here?
Yeah, this is probably the hardest one for me because I don't really like anything, and I get the argument for the pitching. I think John Gray is probably the more reasonable guy I'm looking at, but that's not that exciting. I do think Peterson at low ownership and trying to get different is somewhat interesting, but it's a tough matchup, and I don't see a whole lot of strikeouts for him. That's the problem I have with him. You might get that 5 innings, 1 strikeout like you did the last time. So I'm flimsy on whether I want to play either of these guys. I have enough other pitchers that I like. I do like Gray a little bit, but I think that this is probably going to end up on the outside looking in for me from a hitting perspective. Probably everything but Gray in this game. I'll be against. It is interesting to note that there's a lot of ways this slate plays differently where we don't have Colorado in a windy Wrigley game. And I just feel like the Rangers are an interesting contrarian stack. Kind of curious to know where their ownership ends up. We've got them actually fairly owned right now. I think it's going to dwindle and be a lot less than it's being projected for. That might be an interesting way to go. If you're playing the lottery, I would certainly keep them in. I have Philly, Pittsburgh, San Francisco, and Chicago higher. But they are an interesting contrarian stack that could get lower ownership than all those guys, so don't mind it. All right, and now we get the Coors game. We've got my Dodgers in Coors against the greatest pitcher of all time, Cal Quantrill. No, I'm just kidding. But Sheets, what do you like here? I know it's going to be a pretty straightforward one. Curious what you're getting here. Oh, it's 92 degrees, by the way, with 13-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to right. The Dodgers have a 6.7 total, which I believe is the highest we've seen this year. And the Rockies have a 5.3 total. So this is expected to be a huge scoring game.
Okay. I like both sides of this. I like the Dodgers. I like Colorado. Those two along with the Chicago game. I mean, if you played much of anything except for those, you're getting different. And I mean, what else to say? It's got a 100 run total and going to look like the best game, but I certainly wouldn't discount the Colorado side if people were thinking of doing that. So Dodgers, Colorado, they both look really, really good, and I'm not touching either pitcher.
Yeah, I think these are. It's going to be my normal thing where I'm probably going to take pieces of this game. You got Ohtani at 7K. We haven't had a 7K player in a while. Wanted to point that out. I think this is a spot where I think, you're going to see a lower owned Colorado side than the Dodgers. I don't have an issue with going that way. I just don't think I'm going to make full stacks of either of these teams at the end of the day. I think this total might even climb. And I'll just hope that, Quantrill's good enough to hold him at bay. He's been good. I keep saying it. Say what you will about him. Go through his games, and see what you're trying to pick on exactly, because he's given up 2 home runs his last 10 starts. I don't know, man. But so that's my argument. Now I expect him to hit him today, but man, I don't know. It's going to be really, really chalky. I think these ownerships are probably a little closer, like the 20+% of basically every Dodger is sort of what I'm looking at. And I'm going to just have to play pieces. My favorite pieces would be, no surprise here, would be Shohei. It would be, it depends on who else is in the lineup for the Dodgers tonight, because you're not going to, you shouldn't have Mookie. You won't have Mookie in there tonight. So you'll have Shohei, you'll have Freddie, and you'll have some guys who are a little too cheap, maybe batting a little higher in the order because we want the Mookie Bet situation. So obviously I like this. I'm going to play pieces, but I'm just not going to get to the full stacks. I just think it's really hard to win unless you're max entering and doing that. So I am going to play more pieces than I am stacks there. And I'm probably going to talk someone into betting the under, because it's a huge total, and the first game at Coors thing that used to be a thing. It's not really as much anymore, but might be worth taking a shot on the under there. Although, man, it does look like good hitting weather. All right, moving on. Milwaukee and Los Angeles, Carlos Rodriguez and Jose Soriano. Anything you like here, Sheets?
Yeah, so this was going to be the pivot off the pivot. I was going to get to Milwaukee in some variations as far as my stacks go. And Carlos Rodriguez at 6,300, again, fits the same profile as the other ones I was mentioning. Not to mention that I don't think Soriano is the worst idea either, just because they're cheap. So I do like Milwaukee. I do, for a pivot, but I do like both pitchers here to get to the non-pivots.
Yeah, I think Soriano is just a little different than Gray for me. I don't mind the idea of it's sort of a wild cardy play, but taking a wild card shot on Carlos Rodriguez. I didn't get to any of the hitting in this game, and I do think that what you mentioned is interesting, because I think this game is going to end up 0% owned hitting wise. I just don't think anybody's playing this with these other totals out there. And anything you do to get this is I think it's a great strategy. Just get a little bit different, or use like a Milwaukee or an Angels as maybe your complementary stack if you're going to be stubborn and play the Coors game or play the Wrigley game. Yeah, I think that's a route to go. And for me, I don't think that it's what I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to probably end up higher on Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, because I think the ownership will go all to the Coors and Wrigley games. But I will have plenty of pieces from those Wrigley and Coors games. I just think I might make my main stacks a little bit heavier with Philadelphia especially, and then some Pittsburgh. As far as pitching goes, I think Skeens is by far and away the top pitcher. I think he's probably going to be 70% owned for what it's worth. Do with that what you will. Then I'm deciding between Kikuchi, Fried, and Gray as my favorite SP2s. I think Kikuchi would be the one for me if I had to pick right now. And I say Gray, I should say both Grays, John Gray and Sonny Gray. They're sort of like my 4th and 5th pitchers. So that's what I've got for today. Anything you want to close with here, Sheets?
No, I mean, there's going to be huge ownership in those 2 games. If you want to get different, play like the Mets or the Brewers or something like that. I think it's totally reasonable. That way you can play Skeens, because you play Skeens and anybody from those other 2 games, I mean, you're probably asking for trouble as far as ownership goes. Definitely
with ownership. I agree with that. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I hope you have a great day in the city, and good luck to everybody out there. I'll see you guys live at 6 Eastern.
Okay.
We'll talk a little NBA tonight as well.